Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk to you about something that causes a lot of stress and confusion, tipping in the United States. Just to give you a little bit about my background, I have been working in and out of restaurants for over 10 years. I've done pretty much everything in a restaurant: hosting, serving, food running, bartending. I've done a lot of hospitality work, so I do feel like I know a thing or two about hospitality. And I've also worked in some of the biggest tourist destinations in the US. I worked in Los Angeles and Santa Monica, very busy tourist area. Also in New York City, again, a lot of tourists. So I've seen a lot of travelers and people from other countries come in and just be frankly confused about tipping. I know it can be very confusing, especially if you're from a country that does not tip. And I know the whole tipping thing is a little bit controversial almost, because some people just don't believe in it. They don't think it's a good idea. However, you can't just go to a country and just because you don't believe in something, just not abide by that custom. Think about it in the same way as in if you go to some temples in Southeast Asia, you're expected to cover up your shoulders and your knees because that's their custom and that's what's respectful. Now, maybe you don't believe in that. It's really hot. Maybe you don't want to cover your shoulders and your knees, but you still have to. It's very disrespectful to not abide by those customs. So the same goes for tipping in the US. It's just part of our culture. It's part of the custom. And I think that's one of the cool things about traveling is going somewhere and experiencing the local culture and the customs and seeing what it's all about and taking part in it. And also, even if you're an American and you don't believe in tipping, by just not tipping, you're not going to change anything, unfortunately. You're just kind of screwing over the people who are working very hard for you. So really, it's just how it is in the US, and people who work at restaurants only get paid minimum wage. And now minimum wage for working at a restaurant, there's a wide range. It can be as low as like $2.15 in some states. So, and sometimes it's more, sometimes like $8, sometimes if you're lucky, it might be a little bit more. But no matter what, we pay taxes on our wages and we pay taxes on the tips we get. So actually your take-home paycheck is usually like $0, or a very minimum amount. So really you rely on tips for your source of income. Again, even if you don't believe in that system, you still kind of have to do it. So how much do you tip? At a restaurant, a sit-down restaurant where your server is coming to your table and serving you, 20% is standard. Some people will say 15. I pretty much never tip less than 20%. If it's like absolutely horrible service, I might tip like 18%. It's just because it's the work that I do and I just don't like giving bad tips. And if it's really good service, I give more than 20%. So, but for me, 20% is a really easy number to calculate. All you do is whatever the total is, move the decimal point over 1, and then times that by 2. So for example, if your bill is $100, move the decimal over 1, it's $10, times that by 2, you have 20. If your bill is $60, 6 times 2 is $12. If it's like $58, I just round it up in my head to 60 and then times by 2. Another thing that might be different to you if you're from a different country is that so on the bill, you will see all of your items. Then there will also be a tax at the bottom, and that's a percentage of the whole bill, and then the total. A lot of people don't know, do they tip on the amount before tax or after the tax? I personally believe you always tip on the amount after tax. If you come in and you're just like, no, I don't believe in tipping, it's dumb, it's not a good system, I'm not gonna give any tip, even though the service is great. So you leave $0 tip. As a server, I tip out a percentage of the money I made to the bartender, the barback, the busser, food runner, sometimes the hostess. Just depends on that particular restaurant. And the percentage that it's taking is based off of my sales. So the sales for my whole night of my section. So if you don't tip, I, however, am still tipping out on your sales of your food that you ate and your drinks that were made. So basically, if you don't tip, I am paying for you to have eaten in my section. I think people don't realize this. So for a restaurant, sit-down restaurant, 20% is good. You're good to go. Everyone is happy. If you're at a bar and you're just ordering from a bartender, the normal standard is like $1 a drink. However, if you're somewhere like craft cocktail bar and they're spending 15 minutes like creating like custom drink for you and it's like all fancy, I would say tip more than that. And if you're just building a tab, just 20% on the tab I think is good. I mean, you just kind of feel out what kind of place it is. If it's like a really like, you know, divey bar, then I feel like $1 is fine. But if it's like a more upscale, higher end bar and the drinks cost a lot more, then you should probably tip a little bit more. I know it's hard because when you're traveling, you feel like you're spending so much money and then you go out to dinner and then it's like, oh, you didn't factor in these costs, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it seems like a lot more money than I didn't really want to spend. Before you go out to eat, take a look at the menu, look at the prices, and then just kind of know that you're gonna be adding on maybe just like 30% more tax and tip. Just do a rough estimate, and if those don't seem like prices you wanna pay after adding in that amount, then go somewhere else. In the US, there are so many options of places to get food and drink. Huge ranges of really cheap to very expensive. So there's always pretty much gonna be a cheaper place to go. For example, fast food, you never have to tip at those places. But if you want something a little better, you go to like a cafe or somewhere with counter service. Usually those places just have a tip jar. You should still tip some, but you definitely don't have to tip 20%. It's a different thing. It's a little bit more of a gray area. Or like, I travel a lot on a budget and I can't always afford to go out to eat. So what I like to do is go to a market and buy some food and then have a nice picnic in a park. And I think that's so good. Sometimes I like that better than going out to eat, and it's like no stress at all. Other things that you need to tip: taxi drivers, if you get a haircut, if you get a spa treatment, if you go on a tour, like you tip your tour guide. All of those things I would say also about 20%. You kind of feel it out. To me, 20% is a good rule of thumb, easy to calculate. Usually if you give 20%, everyone is happy, no complaints, and good to go. And you give your country a good name. That's the other thing. There are some countries that have a pretty bad name for tipping. I think whenever you travel abroad, whether you like it or not, you're kind of an ambassador for your country. You're gonna meet people that maybe they'll never meet someone else from your country again. Maybe you're the first person they've ever met from your country. Give your country a good name. Be a nice person. Show that you're informed and that you can follow customs and that you're a good person. That's what I try to do when I travel, at least, is I try to give Americans a good name. I try to be a nice, courteous person that's respectful. Just when in doubt, 20%, good rule of thumb. And just remember, it's our custom. You're not gonna change anything by just not tipping. And as in any country, just try to follow the customs when you're there and just be respectful and nice and be a happy traveler and you'll be good. Hope that helped clear up any confusion. Leave any questions you have in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. Subscribe for more travel videos from me and give this one a thumbs up if you liked it, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.